Hi, I'm Adly. Welcome to Espresso Redefined. In this series of 3 films, I'm going to show you everything you need to know to kickstart your barista journey. I would like to start by asking a question. What does espresso mean to you? Well, for some of you, espresso is a very strong black coffee. But for me, espresso is a concentrated shot of coffee that is extracted with high pressure through a coffee machine. We in PPP Coffee focuses on 3 visual cues: consistent, continuous, and colors. The first point, which is the consistency. Well, in every shot of espresso, we want to make sure that it's replicable. Number 1, we'll have a few numbers that we need to take note of: the brew ratio, the volume, the drop time, and as well as the start time. Next, weighing scale, a timer, and as well as a shot glass. With all these tools that we have, we can make sure that every shot of espresso is repeatable. Next, let's look at continuous. What do we mean by continuous? We want to make sure that the flow is similar to a rat's tail. Steady stream, not too fast, not too slow. If it's too coarse, what's going to happen is that you're going to get a gushing flow. Anything that's gushing, that means the shot is not going to be great. If it's too fine, we're going to get drips of coffee. Then it's going to drip all the way through. This is a figure of a portafilter. In every espresso machine, the filter basket is where you put your shot or your grounds of coffee. We have a spring that's going to hold the filter basket. And then it comes to the main body, which is the portafilter. We have an O-ring, and as well, we have a double snap-on spout. When it comes to espresso, what we are looking at is the color of the espresso that's coming out. Coffee starts from acidic to bitterness. If the coffee is acidic, the color should start from darkest brown, reddish brown, brown, light brown, and then blonde. Darkest brown is acidity, blonde is bitterness. In every espresso, we would like to achieve the full flow from dark to blonde. So you will get a full rounded cup of espresso. What if I just achieve the dark brown to brown? You will get a very intense shot of espresso that's not pleasant, nor is palatable. Then your coffee will lack the finish. Does that mean that it's acidic? No, it's just that it's intense. For espresso, it can't be only the first part that's extracted, nor the last part. It has to combine all 3 elements. So you will get the acidity first, then it comes the sweetness, and then we'll finish off with the bitterness. Let's take a look what affects the flow rate. Well, there are 5 key elements that we need to focus on. Number 1 will be the size of grinds. There will be 2 different sizes of grinds that will affect your flow rate. It's either too coarse or too fine. Next, the amount of coffee that we are putting in the filter basket. It can be overdose or underdose. Third, we are focusing on the roast date. We always tell our consumers to consume their coffee within 14 days to 60 days after their roast date. This is the best time to extract your coffee because the coffee is the most shelf stable. 0 to day 14 is not the best to extract because the coffee is still degassing. If the coffee is beyond 60 days, it's gonna go down in terms of quality. Next, we would like to temp our coffee evenly because with uneven distribution, your coffee is gonna channel. How hard should I temp? Generally, we would like to use between 10 to 15 kgs of pressure to temp the coffee. We need to make sure that the coffee are distributed evenly. To distribute the coffee, we can use either 2 things, by hand or a distribution tool. Now, I'll explain to you what channeling is all about. If the coffee is unevenly distributed, you will cause certain parts of the coffee puck to be denser than the other. The denser part of your coffee puck is going to be over-extracted, whereas the less dense of the coffee puck is going to be under-extracted. Well, let's summarize what affects flow rate: the size of grind, the amount of coffee, the roast date, approach to temp, and as well as the pressure. We would like to make sure that we extract our coffee at 9 bar pressure. If the coffee is grinded too fine, the flow is going to be too slow. Whereas if the coffee is grinded too coarse, the flow is going to be too fast. But if the coffee is grinded too fine, we would like to use lesser coffee. Whereas if the coffee is grinded too coarse, we would like to use more coffee. Well, coming up next, I'll share with you a little bit more about the traditional way of calibration based on these 5 key points. In every traditional espresso calibration, the first part is making sure the grind size is correct before we change the amount of coffee, or what we call dosage. If the flow is too fast, we are grinding too coarse, or the underfilling of the basket is going to cause you that gushiness in your extraction. So if the grind size is too fine, the flow will be too slow. Whereas if you grind it coarser, the flow is going to be too fast. The amount of coffee correlates with the grind size as well. If you're grinding finer, you will want to use lesser coffee. Whereas if you're grinding coarser, you want to use more coffee. But don't forget, if you're changing something, you have to readjust on the other. When it comes to calibration, we'll talk about the three-legged stool: the brew ratio, the brew time, and as well as the brew temperature. When it comes to brew ratio, we like to make sure that all espresso is extracted 1 part coffee and 2 part espresso. Next, the brew time. The first drop, ideally we would like to get, it's between 6 to 9 seconds. The overall time of extraction should be between 25 to 35 seconds. When it comes to the last part, the brew temperature, best to extract your coffee in 93 or 94 degrees Celsius. Now, let's talk about recipe. This is what PPP is currently using. An espresso cup, which is the demitasse, it fits generally between 2.5 to 3 ounces. A piccolo cup fits roughly about 3 ounces. Cortado is about 4 ounces. A regular cup, which is generally from 5 to 6 ounces. Every ounce is equivalent to 30 ml. For the espresso cup or the demitasse mug, it's meant for a single espresso, a doppio, or a macchiato. A piccolo cup is for what it is, right? A piccolo. Cortado, cortado. And for regular, you can fit flat white, a latte, a cappuccino, Americano, long black, or even mocha. As a barista, you're more likely to be asked to make some of these drinks, such as your long black, Americano, flat white, latte, cappuccino. Occasionally, you will get a request of cortado or even a piccolo. Let me explain to you a little bit about what these drinks are. Well, for a long black Americano, it's generally the same. It's just that a long black, you pour in hot water first, and then you top it up with espresso. Whereas for your Americano, it's the other way around. So you put in your shot of espresso first, and then you top it up with hot water. The proportion is going to be 1 part of coffee, 2 part of water. The differences between a flat white, a latte, or a cappuccino, it's in terms of the foam level. A flat white generally has the least foam, whereas the cappuccino has the most foam. What's the difference of cortado and piccolo, you may ask? Well, a cortado is actually the same as a latte, but a smaller version of it. Whereas a piccolo is exactly the same as a flat white, but it's a smaller version. Now it's time for you to put into practice. Like and subscribe to see more content just like this. Join us in part 2 to learn how to froth milk just like a barista.